Good morning or good afternoon, guys. This is Marcus here at Amada Senior Care. It's 10 a.m. and I'm coming to you from a little bit of a nervous place. I just switched from Mac to PC. Like, this is my first webinar on a Windows computer, so this could go terribly wrong because I'm still trying to get used to working on a Windows machine. And you might think I'm really weird. Like, people are looking at me like I was crazy. That I switched from Apple to Microsoft, but so far so good. It's been actually kind of a fun change. But enough about that. I wanted to welcome you guys to the call today. Today it's a great opportunity for you to meet one of our somewhat new franchisees. He's been with us for over a year now, Chris Fowler, and we like doing these calls so that you can hear their experience from them, and also to be able to ask questions from our franchisees. So let me give you a little bit of ground rules and how this will work. And also I'll give you a very quick, brief explanation of what the heck is Amada Senior Care for those of you who are joining us for the very first time. So first thing is, this call is for you guys. This is for you to get your questions answered. So there are two ways you can ask questions. One is for you to go to the question box in the GoToWebinar panel. In fact, it would be really nice is if you can go to the GoToWebinar panel questions box and just type hello, hi, anything you want to type in there. That way we know we're coming out to you loud and clear, and I know that you know where the question box is. So that's really cool if you could do that. So hey, there you go, Shirley. Oh, hi, Shirley. So Shirley's there. She says hello, and that's one way for you to ask questions. The other one is you can raise your hand. So on the attendee panel, there's a hand little guy there. If you click on that, then it will raise your hand. And what we'll do is we'll be able to unmute you, and you'll be able to ask a question live. The good thing about asking a question live is it's nice, right, to hear somebody else's voice. We love that. But also you get to ask a follow-up question, right? When you're unmuted, you're unmuted. You can ask a question. Chris will answer it, and I talk a lot, so I may give an opinion. Then you can do a follow-up question. So it's great, right? You can do that as well. So we want to offer you both ways. There's no better way or the other. Well, there is. I think raising your hand is great. But if you want to ask a question on the question box, that's okay too. So that's number one. Number two, we don't want to be here for more than about an hour. So we're going to do things fairly quickly. I know everybody's busy. So make sure you get your questions in quickly, right? And don't wait until the very end. We want to hear from you. Again, this is a call for you guys to get to know Chris a little bit better. So, in fact, let me share my screen here, and there you go. This is going to be interesting on this new system. So, first thing I wanted to share with you guys is who is Amada Senior Care. I'm looking at the names, and there are some folks on here that you guys have not. It looks like you may not have been on a call with us before. So, real briefly. I just want to tell you, I'm not going to go. This is some of the stuff that we go through on our in-depth calls. But what I want to tell you today is, really, we are a home care company that became much more than that. We started out sending caregivers to seniors' homes to take care of activities of daily living, which is dressing, bathing, walking, grooming, and toileting. Those are the 5 main things that activities of daily living encompasses. But we also do lighthouse cleaning, companionship, whatever it takes. But we started doing that, and we also transitioned to help people find assisted living, boarding cares, and other places like that, because home care may not be ideal for everyone. You know, Chris and I will talk a little bit about that here. We started the company in 2007 here in Orange County. We started franchising in 2011, and we now have about 120 locations throughout the United States. And by the way, so more about Amada, you'll be able to learn more as you get through this call, but also as you get through our discovery process. So I told you guys it'd be brief, so that's it. Let me open up the question box here. And Greg, hey Greg, I'm glad you're on as well. And let me switch back to Mr. Chris Fowler. Here's what's interesting about Chris. So Chris, welcome to the call, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, and hey, I was going to go into a long introduction, but you know what I don't recall is, because you are not a medical device or former medical device and pharmaceutical sales, how the heck did you find Amada?
That's a good question. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for having me. I was in your shoes about this time last year. So to the question at hand, how did I find Amada? I began investigating alternative career paths early last year, and I'll go into some of my history here in a moment. But when I started looking, I started interviewing with some corporations here in St. Louis and nationwide, and looking for that next step. But then at the same time, also began a parallel path of diligence around just being my own boss and looking for my own opportunities, and did a lot of research online, whether it was entrepreneur.com and some other. I did not go the consultant route, but just did my own diligence and saw a lot of good things and rankings and ratings about Amada. And personally, I wanted to do something a little more vital to our community and giving a little more back than, say, and I think rather than like a smoothie shop or a trampoline park or something like that. I've been in healthcare and wanted to stay in healthcare, so started looking at different agencies that provided in-home care and alternative paths, and really started digging in, and I submitted a request for more information on the Amada website is really how it started, and then started talking to Tim and Marcus and the team out in California. And the more I talked to them, the more comfortable I felt that this was the right group of individuals I wanted to work with. So that's how I found them. It was truly just online due diligence while I was doing a separate job search.
I love that, man. And what's cool about that, guys, is I think we do attract a lot of like-minded folks. I was hoping there would be some research about this, but Chris is married, has 3 kids, and I think we probably, as an organization with about 120 locations, we probably have more children than any organization put together. Like we all kind of I think attract a lot of like-minded folks. But Chris, will you share a little bit about your background, your career, and just tell us a little bit about before your Amada franchise?
Yeah, so I grew up in Kansas City originally and went to University of Central Missouri, which back then was Central Missouri State University. Went there on an academic scholarship and the opportunity to play baseball. So graduated there with a degree in business. My first job was Hallmark Cards in their career development program there in Kansas City. Did that for a couple of years, and then Central came calling and said, hey, why don't you come work for the university and we will pay for your MBA. So I couldn't turn that down. Did that for 2 years. And
by the way, are you glad you got your MBA? Would you, for anybody that's going through that path and they want to do it, would you say yes, do your MBA?
I use it now more than I ever have before, just with this kind of 360-degree viewpoint of owning my own business, whether it's the financials one day, whether it's, absolutely. Knowing what I know now, I wouldn't change a thing.
That's really cool. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. So post MBA, went to work for Anderson Consulting in Kansas City, which then became Accenture while I was there. So I'm dating myself a little bit, but was doing some IT consulting, and went to work for a company called Cerner Corporation in Kansas City, which is where I really entered healthcare arena, if you will. So Cerner was built as an electronic medical records company. They sell their solution to hospitals and doctors' offices and so forth. Was there for a while and then decided to move to St. Louis to get married. So had to find a new job in a new city, and found a company called Express Scripts here in St. Louis, which is now one of the largest organizations in the country, Forbes Top 25 pharmacy benefit manager. Came on as a director of account management, and so I was working day to day with our clients, making sure they were happy, that they were getting what they needed. I had a team of account managers. Did that for a couple of years, and then rolled into what we call our product organization, and I was in charge of our retail networks. So working with our clients to deliver the networks that they need, working with the retail providers and the pharmacies, and getting the right price for our clients. So did the retail networks, and then I started on our home delivery pharmacy programs, and that's where I spent the last few years, where we were really focused on becoming the Amazon of pharmacy. So we had the home delivery pharmacy. How do we create that member experience that everyone needs, and that customer-centric viewpoint to bring the Express Scripts pharmacy to the forefront of home delivery for your pharmacy needs.
Hey, you know what I think is interesting? As you're talking about your experience, I can hear in your voice that it's clear that you loved your previous career, right? And I think this is very common of all of our franchisees. I got to tell you guys, I don't think you'll ever hear anyone of our franchise partners be super negative about their previous lives. I don't know why, Chris, but I think it's really cool, right? There was a appreciation for everything that you learned, but yet at the same time, can you share what was happening at the time? You know, because obviously appreciation for your career and for what you learned and everything that happened there, but what was really happening at the time that made you think, hey, it's time for me to do something else, start a business? What was the internal drive for that to happen?
Yeah, so great question. I think 10 years was a long time for me to be at Express Scripts, and I think the tipping point was we realized that anyone who follows the pharmacy industry realized that Express Scripts, we were losing our biggest client in like 2 years. So in 2019, they'll be losing their biggest client. So once we realized that we had some budget decisions to make, and we were kind of the tip of the spear, as I mentioned. We were out in the forefront and trying to figure out the member experience and how to create this great member experience and become the Amazon of pharmacy. That was a lot of money. So when it came budget time, I had to cut about half my team, and then we were trying to figure out next steps. And so that's when I saw the writing on the wall, and I just decided, you know what, I'm going to start exploring alternatives outside of Express Scripts. And that's when I looked at healthcare, both in St. Louis and outside of healthcare in St. Louis and nationwide. And that's when I started that search that I spoke to earlier. So I really wanted to stay in healthcare. And that's, again, what drove me to find Amada and like agencies and finally nailing down on Amada.
And so let's transition out to running the business. This month, now you got your license. It's a discount license time. You started operating till now. You've been operating now for how long?
We took possession of our office in October of last year. So we took possession and then started building our team out. So October, November, December, let's call it. And our first client, we got our first client in January. So 6 months now, we've been officially operating.
Okay, and so guys, I wanted you to know, right, that's the window of where Chris is at right now, and I love it because it's not that far from where you are today. So Chris, share with us, what do you think was the truly the hardest thing about transitioning from a 10-year career, which, you know, I think at our age now, few people have careers that last that long with one company, right? We might stay in an industry for that long. So with that, what was the hardest thing about transitioning from that to owning your own business?
I think the hardest and most challenging thing for me was at the peak of my tenure, I was managing a team of about 50 individuals. And now I manage myself. And that was a big difference. That was a big change for me personally. And it was kind of setting ego aside and doing what needs to be done and digging in and doing every little thing. And if it didn't get done, I only had one person to look at in the mirror of why something didn't get done. So it's total accountability. It's total responsibility for your business, which ultimately flows down to ultimate responsibility for your livelihood, for your family. So That took a while to get used to that idea. And like I said, just putting ego aside and just digging into and enjoying the grind.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a story every entrepreneur will tell you, right? It is hard. It is hard to have the 360-degree view where you are now billing, you are scheduling, you're the janitor, you're everything, right? It all rests on you. Now, okay, so, and by the way, guys, I want you guys to get to know Chris a little bit. So that's why we ask a few questions here, but the time is really yours. What I'd like you to do is start writing down your questions on the question box or raise your hand. We really do want to hear from you guys and get your questions answered. But let's jump into a little bit on the Amada side. So for those of you who have seen some of our information, one thing that we always talk about is that we really differentiate ourselves from other home care companies out there. And Chris, so would you agree that it doesn't matter now that you've met the other franchisees? Would you agree that it doesn't matter what market you're in, there's a ridiculous amount of competition? Is that true?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So like, it doesn't matter if you're in St. Louis or if you're in Wichita or if you're in Portland, Oregon, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Every franchisee I talk to, we talk about our competition. We talk about what we're doing to differentiate ourselves. But there is competition everywhere, and that competition may be 10 years old, it may be 30 years old. But it's developing your talking points and using the Amada playbook to differentiate ourselves and going after those clients that appreciate exactly what we're doing.
So when you talk about the differentiation, and guys, what we talk about, and you, if you're new to this Amada process, we'll cover this in depth with you, but we always talk about the fact that it's not just about loving caregivers, and it's not just about we're really nice people. Now, you need to have both of those, but we talk about the fact that we specialize in long-term care insurance, VA, and these third-party payers, that we really partner and help people navigate through the craziness that home care is. So Chris, can you talk a little bit now, about that differentiation? What was it like to start running the business? What hurdles did you go through, and how did you build those relationships? That's a four-part question.
No, that's the nuts and bolts of what we do every day. So it's getting your arms around. I mean, step one was really getting my arms around the operations of running the business. And some of that's tactical, using the software, using QuickBooks, using the tools, if you will. Amada's great with the playbooks and the training they put us through, much more in depth than some of the other agencies that I spoke with in my diligence. So that's one piece, is learning the operations, just learning the how. And then at the same time, you're out marketing and you're talking to individuals and you're grinding it out, building those relationships. Honestly, I'm still working on many, many relationships that haven't come to 100% full fruition yet. Right. Like I said, we're in the 6 months or so. These hospital relationships take time. We are starting to get referrals from one particular hospital that we've helped out on short-term 24/7 cases. They called up and said, "Hey, can you start a 24/7 case in 2 hours for me? Because we're getting ready to discharge this individual." I said, "Absolutely." And you know what? They called me the next time they had an emergency. So it's building those relationships, digging them out of holes. If you can offer a solution to our referral partners when they are up a creek, that's how you start building their trust, and then the relationship just blooms from there. So to go back to
by the way, this relationship,
go ahead.
How long had you been calling on this hospital until you got the first phone call with the first client from them?
Yeah, that was probably 4 months at least.
4 months, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's good for you guys to know, right? It is relationship building. And can you talk about in those 4 months? Chad Fotheringham really taught me the business, and he used to say, what's really weird is when he left Pfizer and he started calling on hospitals, he said, 3 months would go by and he'd say, I walk in there and they're super nice to me. They like
Right.
welcome me, but they don't give me business. It's the weirdest thing is that in pharma,
Yep.
after a couple of weeks, the doctor's like, yeah, I'll write your script. Yeah, okay, fine, you know. So what was that like for you to kind of go through that, and how did you stay on it?
No, I think it's the grind. It is setting a set schedule, knowing your high priorities of routine visits, and if I had any recommendation to you at all, it's try to build that schedule, try to follow it to the T, so you are going to the same places on a regular basis, and they start to expect you. And that's when you know they're starting to know you. And next step is then once they know you, then they'll start referring some business to you. So we're still building those relationships, like I said, with some individuals, with some entities here in town. So we're still doing that on a weekly basis, just dropping off our cookies, bringing in whatever we need to do. We are lucky enough to have Dr. Josh Luke coming and doing an event here in September. So now
Right.
we've just in the last exactly. So just the last 2 weeks, we've started hitting up our hospital case managers and social workers and letting them know, hey, we have the Josh Luke coming in. Do you or someone at the hospital want to be a panelist? And it's another reason to get in the door and to build a relationship. So, like I said, that's something Amada and Josh Luke built as far as this relationship and these, I guess, sessions that they're having nationally. And again, just part of the playbook. Let's follow up and let's do it and give them another reason to talk to us.
Well, that's awesome. Now, tell us a little bit about the starting the business as far as the operations side. Sometimes people ask, well, you know, how many people do I need to hire? What is the office like? Can you just share a little bit more about your operations from when you started to where it is now and what it looks like today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have an office in an office building. So it's a 2-story office building with probably about 15, 20 suites total. My suite is a little under 500 square feet. So I think it's 473 square feet total. It's divided into 3 offices and a reception area. So it has an office for myself. It has a conference room. So I made one of the offices a conference room. So that's where I hold my training and my orientation and do my interviewing. And then another office for my marketer. So, and that's exactly what I wanted. I looked for a couple of months here in St. Louis. I wanted a 3 office with reception area set up, and this is the one I found. And so that's the physical layout of the office itself. Like I said, 500 square feet is plenty for now. I signed a 2-year lease personally for this one. And I'm hoping that we'll be outgrowing this one in 2 years' time. So,
right.
As far as staff-wise, it's my marketer and myself. And as I had a little more operational background, I still do marketing. I'm still out there talking to our referral sources. I try to get out there daily, but I could not commit and set myself to the schedule that I wanted to, so that's when I brought in a marketer to help me, and he's out there every day doing that, and then I'm filling in and doing just extra as I can. That's my recommendation. That I found it hard to try to do everything myself. I started out trying to do it all. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just agreeing. You know, we hear that a lot. You just can't, and I don't care what business it is, you can't do everything yourself, right?
Yep. That's what I tried it. I was just like, you know what? If I truly want this to do what I want it to do and take off, I have to have that full-time marketing presence. So that's when I brought in a marketer. So right now I'm handling all the operations. I have someone else handling all the marketing. Like I said, I get out when I can. But I'm doing the payroll, the billing, the hiring, the training, the orientations, all aspects of the operations myself. And I am at a point right now where I am looking at, I haven't placed the ad yet, but I am looking at bringing in my first office staff to help. And that person will probably concentrate on some of the scheduling aspects of our caregivers. And just so you know, I have about 25, 26 caregivers right now. So the scheduling aspects, maybe some of the phone screening, so some of those initial interviews, phone screens for candidates, as well as just answering the phones, being that first point of contact for potential clients and everyone calling in. That's probably what I will be looking to hire in the coming weeks or months.
Got it. Okay. So as you guys can tell, right, if we talk about this a lot, you know, it really is a fairly small operation in the beginning, and the marketing side is so incredibly important. And I want to remind you guys, I'm asking questions here. It's kind of a quiet group. There's a lot of folks on the line, but guys, this is your opportunity to ask any questions you have. You can go ahead and type it into the box. And actually, I have a hand raised here by Andrew. Hang on, Andrew. I'm going to unmute you. Send unmute request. All right, I sent you a request to unmute. Andrew, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. All right, what's your question?
Hey, so first, thank you very much. You know, one of the initial questions that I have that comes to mind is kind of getting off the ground and getting afloat. And I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this, but you know, from a financial perspective, right? I mean, it's a little scary looking at the edge of the cliff there. You're in your kind of safe, secure, you know, zone of your regular job, the regular check, the benefits, all that jazz. And Chris, I'm just kind of curious to get your insights on, you know, how you approach that, and then how you kind of got past it to say, hey, this is what I'm doing.
No, that's the biggest jump off the cliff there that you have, and burning the boats. So it's one, I have a great wife, and I literally signed the paperwork in July of last year, and I had an offer. So I was sitting from a company here in St. Louis. So in one hand, I had an offer, and it was a pretty good offer, and then I had the offer to purchase the franchise. So you're exactly right. It's the trade-off is the predictable paycheck. You know exactly what you're getting. You may have a bonus and some other stuff that is not known, but you have a general idea of what you're going to be making, and it's week after week, that predictable paycheck versus potentially the unlimited future growth of your own business. So that's the trade-off, and that's the question you have to answer yourself, and talk to your family and have enough on reserve to get you through the first initial time frame. But I was lucky enough to we have the money set aside to do us for a while, and then it was just a matter of my wife and I sitting down, and like I said, I had these two pieces of paper in front of me, and she looked at me and she's like, you know what you want to do, just do it and follow your heart. So I signed with Amada. But that's the decision that each and every one of us has to make. It's trading off, and there's pros and cons to everything we do, but it's trading off that predictable paycheck for potential limitless rewards in owning our own business.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question, Andrew?
It does. Thank you.
Yeah, great question, Andrew. Any follow-up to that since you're unmuted?
No, that's helpful. I mean, it's definitely something that's on my mind, and you know, obviously, you know, your ducks have to be in a row in a certain way, right, to be able to take that on. So it's duly noted. I appreciate that, because I know I'm not the only one that has it on my mind.
Yep.
No, that's a great question. This is Tim Valencia, guys. I've been listening on. Hey, Chris, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, doing great, Tim. Good to talk to you.
I wanted to at least address, you know, Chris not only owns one territory. Chris is a multi-unit owner here at Amada. He bought his second territory just about, it's been about 3 months now?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, we had somebody coming in that wanted the territory next to Chris, and Chris immediately jumped and said, nope, I want that territory. He definitely sees himself as owning the entire city, which we definitely encourage. I wanted to just let Andrew know. Andrew, is Andrew still unmuted?
Yeah. No.
Andrew, where are you located?
I'm located just outside the Chicago area.
In the Naperville area?
I'm just further east there. I'm closer to the city. I'm in Elmhurst.
How far are you from Naperville?
I'm east towards the city, probably 20 minutes.
You got it. Okay, great. I'll definitely be reaching out to you, and I'm going to go ahead and continue, but I just wanted to let everybody know that Chris is a multi-unit operator, and you could definitely touch base on that, and I'm going to put myself on mute.
All right, thanks, Tim.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add in addition to, yes, it's a big jump, Andrew, but I think the other thing I would add is when I was in your shoes looking at different opportunities, I will say this, the Amada opportunity is a little more economical or less money up front than a lot of other opportunities or industries. So if you're really interested in doing your own thing and starting your own business, the cash outlay, that initial upfront investment for Amada is less than a lot of industries out there.
Yeah,
That's good.
That is a good point.
Thank you.
It's such a yeah. Thanks, Chris, because it's the variable expenses, right? As you grow, they grow with you, but you can start with a relatively low investment compared to other businesses. I think you're right. I think this makes it very attractive. Hey, now with where you are today, was that I know that there are probably days where that decision is like, man, today's a hard day. But tell us a little bit about the rewards of it, right? Like what have you felt so far? What has been rewarding about running this business?
Yeah, so without digging too deep into the financials, the good thing is I'm positive and have been for months. So I'm net positive on a monthly basis. I'm not losing money, so that's great. We're ahead of plan for the year, so that's rewarding. Outside of the financials, we're doing some really good stuff. We're working with clients and families that really need us, and I take it personally when I lose a potential client because I know they're not going to get taken care of as well as they could have been with us. So there's a social aspect, there is just a community aspect to what we do, and there's the financials. So like I said, good thing we are net positive today, and once we turn net positive, that's kind of when Tim and I talked again and we looked at that second territory and went ahead and took the jump on that one as well. So yeah, it's a roller coaster ride, folks. I mean, just this week I've had 3 clients pass, and one was a 24/7 case, which that hurts my that hurts my revenue immensely. But just this morning I spoke with a family that gentleman just is coming home. He's being discharged from rehab tomorrow. He's 93, I think, veteran. And so I started talking to her about the aid and attendance benefit. So we're meeting with the family on Monday. And we're going to get his family, his wife has been a full-time caregiver. He had a stroke, and he's basically semi to non-ambulatory anymore. So she needs some help taking care of him, and we're going to go in there Monday, and we're going to help her get a couple $1,000s from the VA and pay for some care to keep him in the home as long as possible. So there, like I said, there's the financial, and then there's just the social community aspect of what we do. It's a roller coaster ride. You have good days, you have bad days, you have good hours, you have bad hours. But as a whole, I wouldn't trade it for anything. There's nothing else I'd rather be doing right now.
That is so cool. How did you find that client?
That was a referral from, that was from our SNF. That was from our SNF here in town that called us and said we had been in there talking about, this was our second referral from her. So we had been talking about long-term care in VA, and she knew he was a veteran. So that she recommended us, and the family called us.
That's great. That's fantastic. Hey, a question here from Joe. And Joe, thank you so much for being on the call, as well as all of you guys. We still have everybody on the line, which is really cool. We have here, so how long did it take to acquire your first client, and how long did it take you to get to positive cash flow?
Yeah, so great questions. So we opened our door, or I should say we took possession in October and started hiring my staff immediately and started marketing immediately. So we had our first client over Thanksgiving week, and it was just, and I don't necessarily usually share much about that one because it's extended family. So it was just a respite care for 1 week. So I don't really count that one really. We had our first real client, if you will, starting in January. So doors opened in October, hired our first dozen or so caregivers over October and November and December, and had our first clients, if you will. We signed multiple clients over December to start in January. So that's when the clock started running. We turned net positive cash flow wise in February. So we've been running positive on a month-to-month basis since February.
Perfect. Great. Thank you for that. Joe, please, any follow-ups to that, let us know. You can type it in or raise your hand. Let me see. I have. All right, Greg, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Greg, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you for being on the line, Greg.
Hey, happy to be here. So I was hoping to get a sense of, as you look forward, how much of your business do you think is going to originate through your own efforts, locally marketing, et cetera, and what do you expect to get through national accounts and other Amada generated assistance? How do you break that down?
That's a great question. I'll tell you my approach, and then I'll lean on Marcus and maybe Tim. I don't know the averages for our Amada different franchises. I would say this: I count on every client, my team and myself getting ourselves, and then anything that comes from our national accounts, I take as gravy. So I don't want to rest and think that the national accounts are going to necessarily bring me anything. I think realistically, maybe it's, I don't know, 80-20, 90-10. But we are taking accountability and responsibility for bringing in all our clients. We have built a really good relationship with some of our long-term care providers. So I would say our mix there is over 50% of our business is long-term care insurance related. And some of that might be national account, but it's building those relationships with the agents and the agencies here in town is the key to those. Marcus, anything to add from your side?
No, I think that's a perfect answer. National accounts is interesting. We just signed an agreement with the NFL, for example, and that agreement with the NFL, and if you guys don't know, it's the NFL Alumni Association. We are the exclusive provider of home care for the NFL alumni. Now, that will give cases to our franchise partners, but it's not in any way, that relationship will not make any one of our franchisees ridiculously wealthy, right? Because there's only so many NFL alumni. And so I think you do want to go into this business. And I would say this, any home care company or any franchise, anything like that, I would expect that the majority of the business is going to come from your efforts. We are working on a lot of different national accounts that, especially with long-term care insurance, that we believe could change the amount of volume of referrals. But Chris is right. I think going into this thinking that at best it'd be a 90-10 is probably a really good way to go about making that decision of joining this, or I would probably say any of the home care franchises out there. As Chris could tell you, is the home care business is so unbelievably local. Chris, do you feel that now? How it happens in a tiny, like, millions of dollars transacted and referrals in a tiny little space.
Yep, absolutely. We have one agency that just owns one little neighborhood here in St. Louis, and I'm trying to break into that. And it's almost like just a niche that it's almost a status symbol. Hey, I brought in so and so, and they're not even that great as far as caregivers. So it's localized. Some of them been doing it's family for 30 years. So it's breaking into some of that. But quite honestly, I view this very similar to insurance. There's enough to go around, but I want more than my share. So I've built good relationships with some of our competitors here in town. I want some preferred partners potentially to lean on if need be. But it's so it's such demand industry that it's not cutthroat. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. The sheer amount of business out there is just I don't know that you'd ever have one company take care of 100% of the business in St. Louis, right? Because there's so much.
Right.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
One day we'll be there.
Joe has another question about caregivers. This is really good. I think we're getting to the bottom end of the call here, guys. So if you have questions, please type them in. Let me read his question. It is, how are you qualifying your caregivers? Are you hiring them as actual employees or contractors? Is there a typical background that you are looking for in caregivers? And this is a very good one. Have you personally supplied caregiving services yourself since you opened?
That's a great question.
That is. So let me start with caregivers. Finding the right caregivers is probably the number one challenge. So I am very particular on my caregivers and who I hire. Last time I did the math, I'm hiring about 1 out of every 20 that I talk to as far as applicants. And my bar is, so I didn't get into a lot of my family history, but my mother passed about 3 years ago after an 18-month battle with cancer. So that was another reason why I went down this path and why we're doing this today, because we did have some great caregivers as part of that. So when I'm talking to a candidate or an applicant and looking to have someone join our family here, my bar is, would I let you go take care of my mom? And that's the question I have to answer with every one of my applicants. So that's my own personal test. But then as far as background, yes, right now I still have a little bit of a luxury as far as I'm finding good caregivers, and I'm still requiring at least 2 years professional experience. So I may not always be able to do that as far as have that as a bar, but I do now and will continue to do that. So taking care of my family doesn't cut it. You need to be doing this at least 2 years professionally. We have a very thorough background check that we go through. We are the only agency in St. Louis County that is A+ certified by the Home Care Standards Bureau. And what that entails, part of that, in order to qualify for that certification, is we have to have a very, very thorough tiered background check, hitting the federal, the state, the National Sex Offender Registry, all of that. So very deep background checks, 2 years professional experience at least. A lot of mine have 20 years, 12 years, 7 years, whatever the case may be. But it is a challenge. So in order to find the right ones, you have to dig through a lot of others. And finally, the last question was, have I personally provided care? Absolutely. Absolutely, I've done shifts. I have gotten up at 5:30 in the morning and picked up a caregiver in East St. Louis to drive her back to the Missouri side for her shift when her car broke down on Sunday night, and we had to get her to her Monday morning shift. So I've done that for her 6 a.m. shift. I have covered shifts myself. If we had a sick caregiver and I couldn't get someone to replace it in time, I'll go and do the work myself. So that is, again, when I say sometimes you just have to put your ego aside and you have to do the work to get it done.
Yeah. Can you tell me about that relationship with the caregiver? Something that Top always talks about is a lot of home care companies don't realize that your net worth, your value, what you're really building is a community of caregivers, right? It's kind of a weird way to look at the business because people, especially in the beginning, you're like, I need patients, or clients, I should say. I need clients. How do I find the business? And in the end, it's really about the caregivers. Can you share a little bit about that and what your experience has been hiring folks that, I don't know what the wage is anywhere between $9 to $14 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
What has that been like for you, and how do you manage that community of caregivers?
Well, I think one thing that we talk about in orientation, and even prior to that during the interview, is our caregivers, especially being new to the St. Louis area, our caregivers are the face of Amada. They are our brand. So we are being extra careful hiring the right caregivers, simply because word of mouth gets around, and we need those referrals. We need our clients to be referrals. We need our clients to be advocates for Amada, whether they're going to church or going to bingo or whatever the case may be. We want them to be talking about us and to be net promoters of Amada St. Louis. So it's empowering the caregivers to know you're the face of Amada. My job as the owner is to take care of you so that you can provide the care and provide the best care to our clients. So that's what I tell them in the interview process is, you take care of the clients to the best of your ability. You provide the best care here in St. Louis, and I'll take care of you. And that's my job as the owner of Amada. So that's the approach we take.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Very nicely put,
really
Chris.
cool.
Thank you so much for that. Hey, real quick, this is Tim Valencia again. I just want to touch base with Chris and everybody and talk about next steps. I want Chris, can you talk about Discovery Day on coming out here and meeting us and how important that was?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Discovery Day is great. So it takes, it takes a couple of days by the time you travel and all that, but just coming out. So in the process, you talk to Tim and Marcus a lot, and you'll get to know them pretty well, but it's all over the phone. So I still remember Tim and I meeting outside of the airport, just at the hotel. We met, and he picked me up, and we went out to lunch right on the beach, and great views and great food. But part of it was getting to know the people, and Tim and Marcus in person. And then second to that was just meeting the team, learning more about the operations, learning more about the opportunity. And one of the biggest things I came away from Discovery Day, and I remember calling and talking to my wife and talking to my dad even. And one of the ways I put it to him was, I would go work for these guys. And because of that, I'm willing to work with them as part of the system. So that was the test for me, was I wanted to go out there. Yes, I wanted to learn more about Amada, but I had a good idea of what they did and what they were doing. But I wanted to know the people, and I wanted to meet them. And quite honestly, I wouldn't be here if they weren't good people.
Thank you, Chris, for sharing that. I really appreciate it. We have Discovery Day coming up here. Actually, we have a couple people coming to Discovery Day that are on this call. I see Greg Davis. Greg, I'll be picking up next week. He was in your shoes, Chris. It seems like yesterday I picked you up from the airport. That was amazing. Yep. We went down to the Cliff Restaurant down in Laguna.
Yes.
It's a lot of fun.
Yes.
Discovery Day is so much fun. I encourage everybody to get in contact with me, Tim Valencia, to talk about Discovery Day and coming to meet the crew here at Amada, your support team, and really get to know and realize, hey, in the position that we are in today, and you're looking at this business, we could smell the bad things a long way. If you come and meet us, you'll know right away that we've done this for many, many years, and we know what we're doing, and we've been doing this for quite some time. So yes, definitely get in touch with me, with Tim Valencia, to discuss Discovery Day and coming out. We have one coming up here on the 12th of July. We also have one coming up this Thursday. It's kind of quick, but the 12th of July, it's actually the 3 Thursdays in July. We're getting so busy, we're having to have multiple Discovery Days in 1 month. So, Marcos, I'll let you go ahead and finish up.
Well, I thought it would be a cool transition here is, guys, this really started as, Chad and Tafa, the guys who started the business in Orange County. And it's cool, as you guys come out and you meet them, you just I see with them is kind of what you see is what you get. They're great guys, and they lose sleep over our franchisees. But Chris, I thought it was kind of cool that I've been so impressed over these last couple of years is just the franchisees themselves. I think today Amada is not about Chad and Tafa. I think there's so much that they did to build the model, but man, I just want to hear from you. Can you talk about what your relationship has been like with the other franchise partners, this new family that you have met, and how have they accepted you, and what has that experience been like?
Yeah, and I'll start with Chad and Tafa. I mean, and the whole staff there in Orange County at the home office, just exceptional people. But just working with Chad and Tafa, anyone who doesn't know Tafa's story, it's pretty incredible, going from the NFL to becoming a caregiver and starting Amada. So that's first and foremost. When I share that with others, it's almost like, gosh, it's almost a look of an amazement. And I just talk about that was his path, and just that's one reason that I find with Amada was that it's about the care. It's not necessarily about the bottom line. Yes, the bottom line is important for me and my family, but it's about the care. And if we do the right things, the rest will take care of itself. So that's number one, just the Tafa and Chad story and the relationship of what they do and have built the business. But then to your point, you have a new family when you join the team, if you will. I just called our partner out in Reno last week when I was talking about bringing in some additional help. Spoke with him, spoke with our partner up in Milwaukee, which is who I talk to DR up in Milwaukee every 2 weeks at least, and whether just asking questions, looking for advice, just shooting the what. But DR and I are talking every 2 weeks at the least, and then I can call up our Nashville partner, a handful. I've called up our partners in Colorado, Washington, at least 10. And I even called probably 5 to 6 of them just when I was doing my diligence, where you guys are, and started talking to our Kansas City partners and just digging as much as I could into the details. So everyone, and that's one thing that has impressed me, everyone takes time out of their busy days to talk. They know how important it is that we're all in this together. So can't speak enough about that.
That's cool, man. We appreciate that. And it totally was an unintended thing for us. We were looking for the best people, but just this community that you guys have really created, right? It wasn't something that I don't know if we can take credit for it. You guys are so good to each other, and we're so thankful for that. And so for those of you who are going through this discovery process, as Tim mentioned, reach out to Tim, go through the discovery process, and then also take on task what Chris just said, talking to our franchisees. Take that time to build relationships with them now, right? Listen, even if you speak to all these folks and you end up not joining the business, that's fine. It's okay. But just these are folks that I guarantee you, if you reach out, you'll have amazing conversations. You'll learn a lot. And they, as Chris said, you'll feel they care for you even as you're not a franchisee yet, right? So do reach out to these folks and get to know them. Chris, let's leave it here. I wanted you just to leave us with your advice, your parting words to these folks who are where you are. As I think it was Andrew that said, right? It's like jumping off a cliff. It really is. And if you are, by the way, I say this sometimes, if you are not butterflies in your stomach, feeling like you're jumping off a cliff, especially when you sign the franchise agreement, you pay the franchise fee, if that's not how you're feeling, then you're probably a psychopath and there's something wrong with you. Like that is what it should feel like. So you're at the right place. So Chris, your parting words to these wonderful folks who have taken the time to join us.
No, thank you. Thank you for your time today, folks. This has been fun. So I will volunteer. If you do have questions, work through Tim, feel free to reach out, and I'll share as much as I can as you're going through the process yourself. But parting words, I would say that myself and a lot of our fellow franchisees have left very successful careers to do this. So we see where this is going, both as an industry in healthcare in our nation, as well as for our families. So we've left successful careers in order to do this, to be our own boss, to run our own shop, and to help our own communities. So it is a step. It is a step that you really have to look yourself in the mirror and decide if it is the path that you want to take. So that's choice one. And then it's a matter of what do I want to do and where do I want to go? So that's the way I approached it. Was one, am I willing to invest in my own future here for my family to potentially gain a higher trajectory financially? But no, so that's question number one. Am I willing to do it? Number two is, what do I do then? And that's where, after all of my research, Amada was a no-brainer. So my parting words are that if you do believe that this is the right path for you, then you can't go wrong with Amada. Look around, do your own due diligence. Don't take my word for it. But we would be happy to have you join the family here if in fact that's the path you choose.
Great, Chris. Thank you so much, Chris. Again, thank you for your time, everybody. My name is Tim Valencia. I just got an email from Shirley. Shirley, glad to talk to you. We have some wonderful candidates right now going through the discovery process. My name is Tim Valencia. I'm Vice President Franchise Development. Marcos is our Chief Development Officer. Marcos and I have been opening up the franchises since day one. People. So reach out to me. My number is 949-614-0166. Feel free to reach out to me. I know I see a lot of people on here that I'm already in the process of walking them through the discovery process. So continue doing your due diligence. Look at the FDD. Reach out to our franchisees. Ask them those hard questions. Are you happy? Are you making any money? Would you do it again? Go really for the throat and ask them these questions. A lot of you have that validation email. Again, if you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to Marcos or myself. I'm available. I'm actually available 24/7. I never shut the doors. My wife kind of sets the phone off around 11:30 at night, but that's California time. So that sometimes could be at 2 in the morning. So if something comes up, feel free to reach out to Marcos or myself at any time. And again, I'm going to sign off, and I'm going to leave Marcos to have some closing statements. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Chris. That's it. We are done. It's 10:57. We want to keep you guys for less than an hour. Chris, thank you so much, man. We really appreciate your time.
Happy to. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Thanks, Chris. I love you, man. Talk to you soon, brother.
All right. Take care, guys.
All right, guys. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We'll talk to everybody soon. Bye-bye.